I chose to do a personality analysis of Barney Stinson from the TV show How I Met Your Mother.
I'm the new leader of the gang! Barney is the new leader of the gang, and life just got way more awesome. Yeah!
How I Met Your Mother is a TV show that focuses on the lives of a group of friends living in New York City. The gang includes Ted, Robin, Marshall, Lily, and Barney. Marshall, Ted, and Lily were all friends from college, and Barney joined the group after meeting Ted at McLaren's, which is the bar that the group usually hangs out at. Barney is known as a womanizer, and he frequently tries plays out of his playbook to get women. He works at Goliath National Bank, and he exclusively wears suits. He is generally against relationships, but he does have a few girlfriends throughout the show, including Robin, who he ends up marrying. Also, the ending of the show disappointed many fans, including myself, so for the purposes of this presentation, there was no last episode. So for my personality assessment of Barney, I'm going to be mainly looking at the clinical approach and the psychoanalytic approach, and more specifically at narcissistic personality disorder and attachment theory. So the clinical approach looks at different personality disorders, which are characterized by having a certain combination of traits that are considered undesirable. And this combination presents an extreme challenge to how the patient is interacting with others. And these disorders are stable throughout the patient's life. They're not come and going, but they typically don't develop until after childhood or adolescence, so about young adulthood. And one example of a personality disorder is antisocial personality disorder. And the trait combination that you see is antagonism, which is a general disregard for others, and disinhibition, which is a lack of impulse control. So other examples of personality disorders include schizotypal, narcissistic, borderline, avoidant, and obsessive-compulsive personality disorders. And another label that can be used is trait-specified personality disorder, which is used for patients who don't fit exactly into one of the personality disorders that are defined, but their personality functioning is still severely impaired due to their specific trait combination. And personality disorders are included in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So it's a book called the DSM-5. And they are diagnosed using a test called the Personality Inventory for DSM-5. So it's just a questionnaire that's filled out by the patient and frequently by a family member or a friend of the patient. And it's kind of ranking, seeing how they fall on the different traits that can be associated with personality disorders. And it's important to get that outside perspective of a family member or friend because these personality disorders affect others more than they are affecting the patient themselves. So it's important to get their perspective. And I'm going to be looking specifically at narcissistic personality disorder when I'm analyzing Barney. And someone with narcissistic personality disorder, they display a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, and they typically come across as arrogant and rude. They're basically just really focused on themselves. So Barney is a good example of someone who might have narcissistic personality disorder. And I have some clips here that show some of the traits that I've mentioned that make up the disorder.
I thought I was your best friend. Ted, say I'm your best friend. Why does he get to be the best man? I'm your best friend! Marshall, I'm your best man.
You're not my best man.
Right here.
That's part of being a best friend.
You're not my best friend.
Right here.
So those are some examples of Barney believing that he's superior to others and how he expects special treatment from his friends.
I rediscovered just how awesomely awesome my life is. Peace out, hombres! I was not always as awesome as I am today. My life rocks! And I'm out in the world being awesome 24/7, 365. And I'm sick of it. God! I'm surrounded by idiots! Idiots!
And then those are some more really clear examples of him being very arrogant and bragging and thinking that his life is so superior to everyone else's.
Why is that girl checking you out?
Because I look good. It's physically impossible for me to take a bad picture. I don't know why.
So those clips again showing him bragging and in the sense about his physical appearance. And then the next clips show him not caring about others, showing that lack of empathy towards others.
Fiancé of the year? I think I know what's next.
We just had our first fight.
Oh no, what'd you fight about?
And this last clip here kind of emphasizing that point that he thinks he's really the center of everyone's universe. And it also kind of ties into that idea of exploiting others, because he is constantly doing that with his friends, getting them to do exactly what he wants them to do. So usually in most cases it's that so he can get the girl that he wants to get.
You know, if you're not careful, you're gonna lose me.
So going back to the approaches, the psychoanalytic approach is pretty different from clinical approach to personality. So in the psychoanalytic, that is pretty much traced back to Sigmund Freud, who was a psychologist in the 1920s. And essentially one of his ideas was on the unconscious mind. And what he looked at was kind of like the voice inside your head, or your conscience. But his terms for it were the ego, the id, and the superego. And in that, the id and the superego are at conflict between deciding what is the conventionally right thing to do and what is the thing that's going to satisfy your impulses. And then the ego is working to find the rational decision between those options. So that was like maybe his most famous idea, and he has other things stemming on from that that also contribute to the psychoanalytic approach to psychology. Then through the psychoanalytic approach, you get to attachment theory. And this is used to describe the bond that develops between an infant and a primary caregiver. And in most instances of research, this was looked at between an infant and their mother. So this was examined in many different studies. One of the famous researchers of attachment theory was John Bowlby, and he explored this attachment theory through monkeys and seeing how they would return to their caregiver when they were feeling anxious or when they sensed danger as a safe haven, but then also having that caregiver as a secure base. So knowing that with them present, knowing that they can count on them, they're able to explore the world, knowing that they'll be protected from danger by their caregiver. And then this also extended into constructs like separation distress, which is commonly known now as like separation anxiety. And as you see that in modern days, that's a lot of people will talk about that with like children going off to preschool for the first time and not wanting to be away from their mothers and things like that. So basically, the discovery that has come from this is having an insecure versus secure attachment. And this went forward with other researchers. Ainsworth was the psychologist who kind of developed this in studies with human infants and their mothers. So children who don't have that secure attachment, they aren't able to have the secure base in going to explore the world. And they may have an anxious attachment, or they may have an avoidant attachment if they can't count on their caregiver at all. So we can go ahead and extend that into the world of How I Met Your Mother to look at Barney, because he had a very interesting childhood. And we will look at the ways that Barney's relationship with his mother and his father contributed to his attachment style. So throughout the show, we see a lot of interactions with Barney and his relationships, both friendships and mainly his romantic relationships. And the show also goes back into the past a lot, so we can see the development of his attachment style, starting off with his mother, Loretta. She was a single mother and she had good intentions, but she was always lying and not being very genuine with him. The big one was that she wasn't truthful with who his father was, and that created a lot of stress in Barney's life. Through that and her other treatments of Barney, it really developed a avoidant attachment style. And then you can see that his attachment style was also altered as he built relationships later on, as we see in research that people's attachment styles can change as they meet new people and have new relationships. So here are some clips of his interactions and relationships from the earlier parts of the season before he really falls in love with Robin, and we see that big change in his attachment style.
Doing the healthy thing and pretending anyone who leaves you never existed in the first place. You'll be seeing a lot more of Maya. And they never saw her again. What's up? Ooh, hold on. Let me check my personality. Oh, no, turns out I would never do that in a million years.
Really want to spend the rest of your life with Quinn.
Oh, God, you have a point.
And then here you really start to see a change after he's had a couple of these relationships where he's actually been able to get a little bit closer with the women. And now where he feels comfortable with Robin in a secure attachment style, you really see that he's just a completely different person in the way that he views and speaks about his relationships.
It's what we both want.
Why try again?
Because I haven't stopped thinking about you, and you haven't stopped thinking about me.
Robin Scherbatsky, will you marry me?
Yes.
Oh, wait, I'm forgetting something.
What?
Let's go get married.
Love Robin more than I've ever loved anyone, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make her happy. Robin has made me 100% awesome.
And research has shown that there's strong correlation between different aspects of personality and different life outcomes. One of those relationships being between personality and relationships, either friendships or romantic relationships. So we really see that with Barney, that his personality, specifically his attachment issues, have really affected his romantic relationships. And in fact, he was so scared to get close to anyone that he would just push them away right away, and he ends up having over 200 partners throughout his adult life before he's able to have these different friendships and some romantic relationships, especially with Robin, that show him that he can have a secure attachment to somebody, which leads to him eventually being able to marry Robin, which no one would have ever expected at the beginning of the series, with the way that he had been acting and how clear it was that he was so insecurely attached. So yeah, you can really see how strongly that aspect of his personality influences life and his behaviors. And similarly, we can see another relationship between Barney's personality and his choice in career. So throughout the series, there was a running joke, whenever someone asked, "Oh, but Barney, what do you do? What is your job?" he would say,
Please.
Eventually in an episode, they revealed that PLEASE was an acronym, and it stood for Provide Legal Exculpation and Sign Everything. So basically his job was just to be a legal scapegoat, so that the company could engage in all these corrupt activities, and he was responsible for any illegal activity there. And then it is later revealed that he was also secretly working for the FBI as an informant, because he wanted to take down his boss, because he was a man who took away Shannon, who was his girlfriend when he was in his hippie stage, many years ago. So he went into this career and helping the FBI really just to get revenge on this man that he ended up emulating his whole life after anyway, showing how that his narcissism really influenced why he went into the job that he did. And he does eventually help the FBI enough that the man Greg can be arrested, and he finally has his revenge. And obviously there's a lot of speculation going into this, me claiming that Barney could have narcissistic personality disorder, that he has this attachment style, and how his specific life outcomes may have been influenced by those aspects of his personality. But personality is very complicated, and there's no way that I could say, oh, he definitely has this, he definitely is that, because we see a part of his fictional character's life through these episodes, and it is just important to be cautious about understanding the connection between what limited data you have and the fact that there's so much data that you don't know about that could also be influencing their personality, or outside of their personality, events in their life, different situations that they're put in that will lead to different outcomes. So it's just important to keep in mind that I'm making these generalizations and inferences based on the information that I have, but in real life, applying this as a psychologist, it would have a very different speed of coming to conclusions. And finally, we can look broadly at how Barney has an impact on the people around him. Without his unique personality in the friend group, so many things would have been different. Because he was so insistent on his friends going out with him, and his extroversion, his being outgoing, allowed him to be a good wingman for Ted to meet women, and obviously his developing secure attachment that allowed him and Robin to be together in the end. These and many other aspects of his personality were very influential in the events of all of their lives.